had a bunch of ideas, and I remembered a bunch of things, and I made a whole list and everything, everything to talk about. And then I finally remembered. I'm trying to figure out directions. Okay, whatever. Okay, so I finally remembered, and hopefully I focused, because it's gonna be about love, and I was just listening to a love song, so we'll remember, hopefully. And we'll split this into multiple videos. Okay, it's gonna be what is love. This is mostly just gonna be the definition, talking a little bit more about it, just what I finally figured out what it was, and then hopefully a separate video being yandere. So, because I had to learn everything it wasn't and all the unhealthy types of love to figure out what love was, and what real love was, and all of that, and to finally find the answer to all of that. And then my love, hopefully it's a separate video. And then for my type of love, then you're like, I could get like healthier and a lot healthier, but still it won't be like 100%, because you're like, occasionally it'll flare up, and like most people won't have like a super healthy one. It'll be a tiny bit healthy, just like, occasionally, but mine's gonna be a little bit worse than that, even at my healthiest and best. But the imaginary future, the best I could ever get, it would still be like a little bit unhealthy of love, just a little bit extra, a little bit more of a yandere, just a little bit more obsessed and possessive than he needs to be. But it would cut down a lot, and it would have to also be after we got to the point of not after we'd have to be healthy, after we had actually finally somehow believed that someone actually loved us, and that was real, and we had to figure out if that was like real love, and if it's what my definition I'm gonna give in a second. Sorry, but yeah, it's gonna have to be split up a lot. And then probably with that, I'll probably ramble on and get distracted by random memories of being like, oh, this is where we learned it from, and this is who we learned it from, and this is unhealthy, and this is healthy, and maybe a little bit of different books and my interpretation of what I thought it was originally and everything. Okay, so, sorry. Okay, I'll do a little bit of the unhealthy, but, okay. So unlike what we're taught and everything, and I'm also like talking about true love, and then also I'll have to get in like do a marriage video about that, because there's not like the one, for the most part, just like whoever you're closest to and whoever you share the most values with. And also, this is not plugged in because I had that the button thing, you figure it out, and on some of it works, some of it acts like a mic and it helps you sound better, but then most of the time you don't know which way you clicked it, so you then just don't have any sound. Okay, sorry. This is why we were listening to music, but we can't play music and it's at the same time because we left our phone in the kitchen. Because we have 2 phones, so we don't die. Because I'll be on one phone and then it dies, and then instead of panicking and like dying, because apparently we're still not tired yet, and we didn't pass out asleep, we plug it in and we switch to the other phone, and then we can survive until we pass out and are unconscious, and then start the cycle again once we wake up, because at least one of our phones has to be plugged in at all times, so it's charged. So on rare occasions, usually when I make one of these videos, I have them both out at the same time. So one of them's usually ends up close to dying, and then the other one's usually almost still fully charged because it was plugged in all day until I removed it to make the videos and everything. Okay, sorry. So distracted. Okay, but what is love? I swear, you should just skip all this video until I answer. Or if you know the answer, then you don't have to watch this video. Okay, what is love in my interpretation, my understanding of love? Is basically, if you mess up, and you mess up like multiple times, and like you have flaws like everybody, and you mess up and everything, and you don't do what they want, and like you mess up, and then you have disagreements, and like you're not identical, you're different in some way, you don't have all the same values, You might have some opposite values. That doesn't change how they treat you. But you're like, it changes because you get into arguments, but overall, it doesn't change their level of affection for you, and they still love you, and they still care about you, and they still forgive you, and they still understand you, even if though you're flawed as a person and everything, and they still care about you, and they still love you, even when you mess up, and they still give you affection and kindness, and they're understanding. Except they're human and they make mistakes too, so they're not going to be like that all the time. And there's going to be fights and everything, and you're not going to be happy all the time. But as long as you're more happy than angry and more upset, you're like, and a lot of times it'll be like almost equal, and then one will be a little bit more than the other. But like most of the time, it's a little bit more happy than upset. Then I think it's good. It's bad if there's like a huge difference. It's good if there's a huge difference about happiness, but that usually doesn't last long. It usually evens out. Especially the longer the marriage is, the longer the relationship is. But even when for some people, in healthier relationships and things like that, it's still mostly happy. It's still the bigger gap. But for the rest of us, we're just hoping for a small gap. And we're just learning, and we're just trying to make sure and also be like, take a second and be like away from, and like probably also get insight from other people, and they'll probably have to tell us, because like if you're angry, then you just think about all the times you were angry, and then you're happy, you only think about all the times you were happy. And if you're mediocre, you might also just be swayed by the mood, and you're not like 100% sure. And Max can't count anyway, so Max is like, I'm not sure how much I was happy. I was happier than sad. And then you also got to evaluate, and you still probably have to break up. You have to evaluate yourself also, and you're like, am I making them more happy than sad? Then you might just need to break up so they can be happier, and they can find someone who makes them happier. And then in some cases, you might have to break up. It's probably like marriage conversation. I'm gonna dive in and out of these different videos, probably these different topics. But even if like they make you like more happy, and like it's a really good relationship, the marriage thing and the relationship thing, they can't be too similar to you, because then you'll be like, I'm dating the same person, we have nothing to talk about now. Yeah, or they're like the same level of mess up you're like, but then no one in this relationship is healthy, and no one can make us try and be healthier. we both just trigger each other and things like that. That's not okay. You gotta leave. And then, but if they're too perfect, then you become jealous of them being too healthy. Or at least I will. If you're healthier, you might just like sometimes or a little bit, and that's still okay. You'll still have to save that relationship though. You just have to become friends or something, less intimate. And you might just have to hang out less a lot of time, because you keep comparing yourself to them. And you're like, I wish I was like you, but even at my healthiest, I won't be able to become as healthy as you. And I can't get to that point. And this jealousy, your presence and your perfection, and you being nice, understanding, and loving, is causing these insecurities to flare up and causing jealousy, which means I'm making myself unhappy, and I'm making you unhappy. So it's not like either party's fault or both of your parties' fault. It's you making yourself unhappy in the relationship, and then you'll have to leave so you can both be happy, but mostly just for your own happiness. It's just like, just so I can be happy, we have to break up. But you're like, you will probably actually also be happier if we do this, because I'm making you unhappy because I'm making myself unhappy. And then you're like, that can happen even without the whole jealousy, and I noticed you're healthier than me. That could just be in time. And then sometimes, even if you're like perfect for each other, you have to leave because you're human, you'll have doubts, and you're like, maybe I can do better. And then you leave, and then you're like, I guess I learned I can't, and then you're the best option. And so you come back to them, and then they come back too if they didn't find someone better. So you both explore the other options. So then you actually know if they're like the one. And even if they're like not the one, it's the best option you could find. The best that was close to available. And even if they're not the best, then you're like, it's the healthiest and the best for me, because the healthiest causes unhealthy feelings and causes me to be, I can't do a relationship like that. Yeah. So Max just needs someone who's healthier than me, but not majorly healthier than me. Max will find those people too and probably mess up and then have to break up. But then Max will probably also mess up, just on purpose, because Max will probably not be able to break them themselves. Because Max doesn't understand how to do a healthy breakup. And even my best version that I could possibly do and possibly think of as a healthy breakup wouldn't be possible. Because if we like meet and everything, then I'll probably just cry and be like, I love you, and like, don't leave me, and be pity party. So I'll drag out the relationship that's unhealthy and it'll be bad. So if we somehow finally actually do break up, it'll be, I ghosted you, but hopefully it's more than that. Hopefully it's a phone call. Probably still won't be able to do that. It's probably just going to be a text or an email. Like, it'll be a text that hopefully actually sent, and then I ghosted you, or I blocked your number. And then I'll still have to do that even if we end up friends later, just so I can get over you and move on, and then come back and be like, okay, I grew up and I developed, plus like I'll have a lot of breakups and everything, because I'll be like, I wasn't healthy enough to handle or understand or accept and not be as jealous of you. And then hopefully you're still around and still willing, and hopefully we're still friends or something. So maybe we can get back together, or I'll find someone who's similar to you or like you when I'm healthier, because we have to learn and break up and all that to develop. Oh yeah, this should be a different video. But yeah, oh no, because love songs are wrong, and I'll explain this in another video, in the Andre one, because the whole song I keep remembering just in my head is that, like, I'll kill for you and I'll die for you and you're like the only one. Like, that's not really the case anymore, and like we shouldn't be holding on to that, and like, I'll marry you, but like, it's not always the best choice for all these things, and like it sometimes it depends on the person, sometimes it doesn't, like sometimes the situation, like everybody's different, so it's just whatever works for you. And then Max was thinking about how kids get involved in this. It's another conversation I thought of, was how, like, you should apply that to, do they make you happier? And then Max only was able to leave relationships after giving them countless millions and millions of tries. But then every time we interacted, they triggered me, and they made me have panic attacks. So I couldn't handle the relationship, and I just kept getting hurt more and more. So I had to cut them off. And Max couldn't really cut them off, so Max just ghosted them. Max just avoids and ghosts people because Max doesn't know how to end relationships otherwise. And then, like, I reconnected once. I had this problem before. And also, like, because I noticed and I realized that I was unhealthy. I got to an unhealthy, like obsession with them and everything. And I convinced myself and I lied to myself and I was making myself like them just because we were talking and just because we were similar and we were reconnecting. And that one time forever ago, we were remembering one time we had like a crush on them, even though we're like not physically attracted to them, like, and we're starting to get like emotionally attached to them again. And there's the whole difference between physical and emotional attraction, and how for me most of the time that doesn't even match with gender, so it might not match with the people either. And then most of the time, if you just have like the emotional connection and not the physical, you're usually just like friends and everything. Okay, sorry, that's a different topic. No, but yeah, I noticed, and I was like, I'm gonna now have feelings for you, and I keep imagining an imaginary relationship, but all of my imaginary relationships end with people cheating anyway, and that's the other reason why we had to be like open relationships, because in my head we're killing people like in how people are taught. Okay, so that brings us back to the topic. That's how it's connected. Okay, because you're like taught and everything, and people, you see it all the time. You're like, if you cheat, like you break up, or in the other case, mostly you just like threaten to kill them, and you also just threaten to kill whoever they cheated on you with. But that's yandere, that's possessive, that's really unhealthy, and that's not okay. And then it's really not okay if you actually do that thing, that you actually you go through with that threat and you actually kill people, and especially if you kill both people, because that's like the definition of yandere, because you're like, if you don't love me, I'm gonna kill you and whoever you fell in love with. The 100% yandere is and does, but it's just like seen as like another thing. You're like, it's bad, but it's also how we are taught to love and how to pass it down and how people understand love. And there's also that whole monogamy thing, and we're slowly learning that it doesn't have to be that way, and that you don't have to react that badly to cheating, or you don't have to threaten people with cheating. You can just let go and move on and find someone else. And then also the whole like, just, you can actually just move on after a relationship and find someone else. There's that whole thing, and not stop believing that they're the one. Stop saying in unrealistic standards with that stupid Prince Charming thing. And Max, like, I didn't have the whole unrealistic Prince Charming thing because I believed that Prince Charming was a dick. Max said he is the epitome of evil because you only see him for a tiny bit of screen time anyway, and he only cares about the girl's appearance anyway, because they have zero time with the princess to connect about feelings or talk about emotions or learn anything about each other except maybe a name or a shoe size in Cinderella. And then that's why I liked Just Ella. I'll probably talk about that later. But and Just Ella was like, okay, you want to marry me, and he only picked her because she was the prettiest and she fit the most, was the closest to the beauty standards, and she was like semi-noble. She was part of a noble family, and she was the closest to the beauty standards. And you're like, and she wasn't an illegitimate child. She was a legit child. So they picked her, but they only picked her because she was being abused, which means she was skinny and anorexic and couldn't eat anything. And they made sure to do it like a year before, and then they trained her to become his wife. But then she fell in love with the tutor and wanted to learn about the world, and was like, oh, wait, like I picked and I chose to go with the prince to escape my abusive family, but there was another way. I could just run away, and I can find a place to go. I know about a place to go, even though it's going to be dangerous and it's going to be a war, and I'll probably have to be a nurse and save people and everything. But I learned about another option. I don't have to get married now. I can run away. And then they imprison her and everything, but she's smart and everything. And even though they're starving her again, she's like, but I made friends with all the maids that were also being abused, because I was like, I know how it feels to be abused, and I'm not going to abuse you. So they make friends, and so she gets a shovel, and then she digs. And then she's also used to being starved, so she's like, you can starve me all you want, but I won't do what you want. I'm going to run away. And I might be trapped in a prison, but I'll take my way out. And she does, and she flees. And she changed the beauty standards with that name too. Sorry, this is a different topic. I just really love, it's called Just Ella, because you're like, Cinderella. And then she's like, nope, I'm just Ella. I didn't get married to the prince. We didn't have that romance. You're like, maybe there was that BS with the I ran away and the shoe thing, but really they just found me again afterwards. And they were like, do you want to marry me? And you were like, yes. And then you also learned that it's a scam for the most part. And they just found a pretty woman, and they're gonna just make her obey the rules and everything. But she broke the beauty standards because they were forced, because they thought she had a sibling that looked like her, that was like skinny too, and that was pretty like her. But they were half siblings instead. But those were still pretty common. But that meant that the girls looked nothing like her, and that they were super fat. And so, but they didn't have any time. It was the day of, so they chose her house again, and it was minutes before the wedding. So they picked the least fat or the least ugly between the two of them, but they were apparently both fat and ugly, and not even close to beauty standards. And what they did also to narrow it all down, they made 2 different entrances, and they obviously only invited all the nobles, and you still had to be a noble, you know. They probably excluded a lot of the lesser houses and everything, so they could track where she came from. But once they saw you, they put you in a pile. They had, like, you're a noble and everything, so you might see him and shake his hand, but you won't, you're not a bride candidate because you're not pretty enough, which almost everyone fit into, almost all the royals did. And then this small line where you'll actually dance with the prince and he'll spend time with you, because you all fit the beauty standard. You're all super skinny and like tall and pretty and all of that. And then we'll just pick one of you. But they didn't keep track of all of those, and then they thought that one of the pretty candidates was her relative, but turned out not to be. So then they changed the standards because all the girls copy and all the nobles copy how the queen looks and what they do. So eating was finally promoted. Eating food was finally promoted. Yeah. Like, so she made real change. She didn't want to and mean to, but her running away caused real change, and she did really rebel, and she got away. Because one of her teachers was like, it was like her afterthoughts. She realized all of this. She's like, she got away. She really did it, because she's like, many people have come and tried before, but none of them succeeded. Like, I probably tried, but, I didn't succeed. But you did. It was an accident. And you were just trying to run away. And you succeeded in doing that. And so you changed society a little bit. Okay, that was cute. Okay, yeah, but in most cases, and then, like, beauty standards changed over the years, and it's just ridiculous. And for the most part, and still in most cases, like, if you're fat, it means you're rich, or you can eat food. You have enough money to buy food. And you're like, it's kind of that way with being skinny a little bit now, but for the most part, it's still that way. Because you're like, if you're poor, you were skinny because you didn't have enough food, and you're like, that's still the case for most people. But then you just have this like random middle ground where it's just the hodgepodge of, oh, but you're like skinny and you're usually not like well built. Yeah, but sometimes you might be like super muscular or whatever and poor. That was just because of all the physical labor you did. But there's less physical labor jobs, and it's not being taking photographs and all of that now. And most of the jobs moved to indoors with air conditioning and all of that. And most people, if they're smart enough and they're able to, and they have enough money to go to college, they end up with those jobs instead of the physical labor ones. So they usually just don't get as jacked, and then might also just not be in their muscle, just not be able to appear that jacked. Like, I might be able to get a little bit jacked, but I probably won't be able to get anywhere like close to my brothers just naturally, because it's just not in the genetics, it's just not in the cards for me. Just like height, apparently just wasn't in the cards. Not for me, you know. Anyways, and that varies. Max is distracted by anorexia and beauty standards. Yeah. But there's most of that middle ground of you're like, I can't tell, because a lot of these fads and crazy diets, and then personal trainers, and then usually only if you're super jacked, it's usually if you only have like super personal trainers and you're genetically gifted and you're rich, so you're eating healthy and all of that, and you have a crazy diet, and you have the trainer, and you're like a weightlifter, or you're in sports, or you're in sports and working out all the time because you're in a movie or you're an actor or something like that, you know what I mean. But yeah, so society has changed over the years a little bit, but yeah. You are usually just anorexic because you're poor. And that's still the case for most people. But then with food availability and government funds and all of the help for poor people, it's usually, it's also a choice now. Now you're like, I'm poor. So I might choose to cut out food, but then I might also choose to cut out food because I've seen all the anorexic photos, and now I'm inspired to not eat and have more eating problems like me. Okay. Oh, and also I have that "Don't Be Me." Like I stopped saying it and everything because I changed the link or that little hashtag for my channel. They're like my channel name is right after it, but it doesn't have any spaces, and I know that, but it says "Don't be me," or it says "Do not be me," you know? And that's what I mean. Try and be healthier than me. That's the goal. Okay, this is way longer and unintentional, but if I do not post it, I will not remember to. Okay, so as I said in the beginning, the thing about kids was, you're like, in all relationships, you can apply that if they make me happier. And you're like, for children, it's going to be a small margin. And then, even if it's a small margin, it might be the other way around. And you'll also have to double check with like an outside source to double check on that. And also, I did like the whole joke about how if like everyone who's going to be a parent and new parenting people, like before you decide a baby, you should take like a test. And I was like, what test though? And then I was like, whatever test they make foster parents take. And I was like, you could also like try out to see if you want to have a kid and if it makes you happier or not, and get others' feedback by like just, you don't have to do the foster thing or adopted thing or even try that. You can just like babysit a friend's kids and then be like, I can handle this. And then you might like really think you can handle it, but then a friend sees it or a friend helps, and then you're like, no, you can't. But yeah. But then like, you're like, even if it's like super healthy, like the parent and child, and like it's a really good relationship later on, and there aren't any problems, like they might have still not have been able to pass that type of test because they were like a new parent, or even if they weren't a new parent, you know, because people have flaws and everything. But just make it mandatory that you take the test, because that will just help. Okay, so I agreed with that thought. But no, with kids and everything, I understand like it'll sway and it'll depend on the day, and like some days they make you happier than others, and like they misbehave because they're a kid and everything and they're learning, and sometimes you'll get angry with them and all of that, and so realistically, and then you also have to take a minute and make sure that you're like, I'm not angry and I'm not like super happy right now. I'm kind of mediocre, and I can kind of evaluate this as a little bit of an outsider, and I'm gonna check with an outsider who really knows the situation, seen it a lot, just to double check to see if I'm right or wrong. And then also after they tell me, I'll probably realize that they probably are right about their feedback, and if I was wrong, I'll probably remember the details that I forgot, and I'll figure out if I was actually happier or not. And then in that case, you're like, even in the best situation, you're probably not going to be happier most of the time. And that's fine, as long as the margin's small. And your love for them obviously outweighs them making you unhappy and making you angry because they mess up. And that's the whole thing with love thing. You're like, it's got to be unconditional. With children, especially, because otherwise you might not even abuse them, and like if it's bigger, the margin of like anger and everything, and even if you don't like verbally or emotionally, like, or physically, like even if you don't mean to, you might accidentally, and even if you don't, and there's that big gap, you're both gonna not be in the best place emotionally. You're both not gonna turn out as good as like other kids and other people who don't have that gap. So it's just my thoughts, my thoughts and my opinion, and I overanalyzed because sometimes I was like, I could have a kid, and you're like, physically, no, I couldn't. But then, and I don't want to, no, and mentally, no. And then you're like, but sometimes, like babysitting or like other kids, you're like, and sometimes, mostly because you get distracted by how cute they are. You're like, oh my god, they're cute, and sometimes they're fun and everything, and you enjoy hanging out with them, so you forget all your problems, and you forget all the times that you got angry at them. And you were just irritated, and you weren't in a mental place, and you were just angry at them. And Max also has to avoid his nephews, because Max can't do that, even with nephews most of the time. Max struggles, and Max is like, yeah, I 100% could never have a kid or adopt a kid or even a teenager or anything like that. And I couldn't like babysit. Maybe I could babysit for a little bit, but not long term and not a lot, because I can't handle it. And most importantly, it makes me more angry than they make me and the situation and everything. It just overall, even if it's not intentional or whatever, it's not their fault. The idea of kids, it makes me more angry than happy, which means even on accident, you're not going to be in the best head place, and you might accidentally take that anger out on the child, and you're obviously, hopefully, in a healthy place, so you don't do that like verbally or physically or emotionally. But like me, you're like, okay, I know what's happening, so I'm going to ignore the child. But you're also like, you're not the sole dependent, and it's not your child, and you don't have to take care of the child or babysit the child. And someone else is there, and someone else has to take care of the child. So you can ignore them, and you can get away from them, and you can give them space. And you can give yourself space. to heal and then maybe recharge and maybe interact like occasionally. Or just see their Facebook pictures because that's all you can handle. Because they're like, oh my god, they're cute online, but once in person, I instantly hate them and I just can't be around them. Because then I might say negative big word things and they shouldn't hear that from me. And I know that's bad and I don't want to hurt them. Even emotionally and on accident, even though they can't understand what I'm saying, I shouldn't be saying this to them. That's bad. And I know this about myself. That's why I can't have kids. This should be a different video, but yeah. I'm sorry. This is the closest I could get focused to, but I said the point randomly in the video. Yeah, so it's like you and seeing kids. It's like if a child is like, love is like a love a parent has for a child, so no matter what they do, and no matter how messed up and no matter how different they turn out and no matter what they believe and change about themselves and no matter what they decide, as long as they're not like hurting you or attacking who you are, and even then, if you're healthy enough and you can be like, that doesn't affect me and that doesn't trigger me, and as long as they change and they grow into a different person, and as long as they don't turn out to be like a mass serial killer, and then maybe even some of those cases they can still love their child, and they don't turn out to be like a complete monster like I just listed, or unless they're a psychopath, which means they're just unable to love anyone else except for themselves, or a narcissist, which seems like the same thing, except apparently they can love other people, they just actively choose not to, and they choose to put themselves above everyone else, so all the relationships are healthy. Then you're like, I understand, but they were hurting people and it's not something you can control or anything, so you were forced to let go of your love and your affection for them, because that love and your care and your unconditional love for them started hurting you and made it more possible for them to hurt you, and it just causes you more pain, and you're like, that's not healthy, and I need to get in a healthy place, so I have to get away from that, so I can't give you all of this love. So in those cases, then you have to go back to a little bit of conditional love. But you still probably, even then, you're still like, I did really love you, so I do in my heart, but I gotta hate you sometimes. So things hurt less. Because I gotta hurt myself first. Oh, well, that's what I really hated. Because that whole, like, I'll kill for you, I'll die for you. You're like, no, that's not healthy whatsoever. We're promoting suicide and double suicide, and we're promoting murder. None of that's healthy response for love. And that's not what love is. And love needs to still have boundaries, even if it's unconditional. It still needs boundaries. It still be like, I love you, but I also love me. And then you gotta love yourself a little bit more than the other person. So then you can realize and be like, oh, you're hurting me. And I love me, so I have to break this relationship or distance myself from you so I can be okay. Because I'm important too. Instead of the other way around. And Max was taught about the other way around. And then you're like, even if you value them more, you're not supposed to put yourself down. But Max only understands and was taught and still does. It's only we put you up and we put ourselves in the dirt and lift you higher and make you a god. Because that's what Max was taught. So Max is going to work on that. Max now knows it's not healthy and it's wrong. And Max will have to work on to change that. And make ourselves, we won't be able to completely, but at least a lot of time and in certain situations be like, okay, not healthy, you're hurting me, we gotta let go of this relationship. I probably have to be hurt a lot to get there and figure it out. But yeah, we'll be able to let it go and move on and find someone better that makes us more happy and everything. I'm mostly just trying to teach myself, say it out loud to reinforce the beliefs and to double check and be like, yes, good job. They do love you. After you believe it, you're like, or you're like, no, they actually don't love you. That's a lie. You need to run away and escape now so you can be safe again. Or you're like, no, they do love you and they help you and you keep safe. Don't let go of that and don't believe the lies in your head that says they don't. It's that thing. So it's whatever makes you happier. But then also, the real important thing is that most people still haven't learned, and what's not taught is that you gotta love yourself more. So if they die, or even if they do commit suicide, you don't follow. And especially since Max believed that was true love and everything, and thought that was the only solution, you're like, no, you can move on and find another love of your life, and it's not the one. So after you found the one and they died, you don't have to automatically die now or just wait to die. You can find, and then, even if you're not willing to move on or date or anything like that, you still have physical needs, and you can still do that without feeling guilty, because you're a human. So there's that aspect. And then you can actually, it's not cheating or anything if you get remarried after they die, or it just, even as long as it's not cheating and you break the relationship, where you're like, even though you were the one and we had all of this, it's just time to move on. I just gotta find somebody else. As long as it's not cheating, if it's open or not open and you have to get a divorce to do that, whatever makes you happy, man. Whatever works. And then also, we need to stop the suicides. And like, especially with gays. Because you'd be like, you're my boyfriend, and he was the love of my life, and he was the one, and he was the only one who loved me, and all of this. But the whole thing of like, only one who would ever love me, that thing, we need to get rid of that. Being like, no, we can love more than one person, and someone else can love us afterwards, and we can move on, and we don't have to feel guilty about being happy later on after someone's passed away or they commit suicide. And we don't have to commit suicide with someone, and we don't have to die at the same time, and we don't have to die to be with them. And then Max is like, even if you do die, like, we don't 100% know if you're going to be with them or anything. Like, no matter what you believe in, there's no real guarantee that you'll now be together, so you probably died for nothing, and that was probably a mistake. But you're like, it was for love. Everything was for love. Love can't and needs to not be an excuse to hurt yourself or others. It's not okay. It's really not, or put yourself in danger. It's not okay anymore. So for the most part, what's taught is unhealthy love, and a little bit of obsessive love, and a little bit of yandere love. And that's all yandere and everything, Dying so we can be together, yeah, no. That's obsessive and yandere and all of that. And not loving yourself. You need to love yourself. And you also need to love yourself so you can love other people. And be aware and be like, oh, you actually do love me. And you're not just faking and trying to manipulate me. And it's not actually a lie. Or you're like, oh, you do really love me, but you're just not in a healthy enough place mentally to handle a relationship right now. So we need to break up so you can and will work on yourself. And anything between or anything around that, Everybody needs self-improvement in some ways and some days, Even if you're not effed like me, effed up, And I had to explain to my mom about cursing. because cursing helps with stuttering. It's proven and everything. There was a whole movie about a king who was stuttered all the time. And then Max stuttered really bad, and Max still can. And then most of the time, you replace stuttering with like, and then you're like, and then you're taught in school and everything, you're like, you're not allowed to say or or anything like that, or pause between sentences when you don't know the answer, or you're struggling to find the answer, or you're trying to say words, it's just not happening. So then I shut down, or I just become silent, I become quiet, or we curse. We used to just say like some bad words, but then they became harder to find. So we mostly just curse so we can continue talking. It's usually not an insult, or it's usually used as, it helps us describe something, and then it helps us express how we feel, positive and negative, how we feel towards people. I'll usually say, I can say bitch, slut, whore, and it can mean positive things and negative things. It can mean both, even though it's all negative words, and almost all the time. A lot of the time I'll use it as a compliment, and then I can also use it as a double-edged sword, And then I'll do the same thing with cursing, and then even then, if I'm not meaning to, I'm just trying to get through the sentence. But the fact that I am struggling to get to the fucking sentence, and then Max can even stutter on curse words, But you'll find the end of this sentence. Damn it, it's happening. It's very rare because I do what? Shut down. Stop talking. Just start cursing. And we just gotta curse a lot. We also gotta get stuck on a word and repeat it a bunch. Just so we stop stuttering. Fuck. See? The struggle, and that frustrates us, so it's even more accurate to curse. So yeah, I explained this to my mom without the stuttering. Max is also cold, so that doesn't help with me stuttering. And we're tired, and my brain's not working, and the pill probably wore off. And the pill doesn't even help with the stuttering. And it appeared randomly. It usually doesn't show up. Okay, but yeah, Max does stutter in this. Shh. Stutter? Yeah. I really hate the definition. You're like, it's brilliant, and it makes sense, why they would pick it. Because to say it, you get the symptom. To say the word, you're going to do that action. If you say you're going to do it, which will prove that you have it to everyone. It'll be a struggle. But now they have evidence to be like, oh, you're not lying when you say you have a stutter. Yeah. We hear it when you say the word, so we know it's real, and you're not lying and making it up. It's going to be annoying, and it's really hard to find that word and to say it. It's going to take a really long time. But when you do, we know you have a problem. Okay, yeah. But we got a lot of... We talk... I don't know what's happening. I think we're just shivering. And I don't feel cold, but apparently we do. I'm just maybe ignoring it or something. I don't know. Okay, but yeah, I don't know what's happening with my mouth. My jaw. Yeah, we need to pop more. I don't know what's happening. Okay, but yeah, and we're also fidgeting. We're gonna talk about ADHD symptoms of perfection and fidgeting, and apparently my struggle at work counting. Numbers are a problem because words are. So numbers you're easier. but you're like, no, I just get confused, and we can usually just get through it faster because they're shorter. Because it's usually short and smaller numbers, so they're easier to handle and deal with, and even if they're bigger ones that sometimes sound the same and you can't tell the difference between part, and you can't find things, and you get lost in directions because you had to go one direction and the other, and then so you put a trash can so you know what direction to head into again, and then you have to ask the location 50 times, but then you might go the wrong direction and find a different location because numbers sound the same. And then if you see numbers, they sometimes turn into letters, or they turn into completely different numbers, but they stay numbers. Oh yeah, so I think we're going to cover this, a little bit of it in here. Yeah, and then... But I learned I was like a perfectionist, because you're like, I'm not really a perfectionist, and you're like, you seemed like one in art class. But I was like, no, I did the assignments because they weren't about drawing monsters. So I wasn't interested, and then Max picked monsters also on purpose because you can't be perfect with that. Because no monster is going to look perfect, because the more effed it looks, the more accurate it is to being a monster. So, and then you can also just try again or move on to the next thing. And then you're like, I want creepy and cool, or you just aim for cute, and then you end up with creepy, but you're like, this works too, and so you just move on. And that's all I want to draw is those things, because Max tried really hard, and Max realized that he can't really draw other things successfully, and plus, successfully draw monsters. Yeah. No one can prove you can't do it, and that yours isn't perfect, because it's a monster, which means the more crazy, the better. See, I tricked you all. So perfection doesn't exist, and you get around it with drawing monsters, but apparently coloring, yeah. Yeah, they tricked Max because they made Max color everything. And Max would turn in, but they kept sending me back, and they kept like fixing a little bit of it for me sometimes, and they would tell me everything I had to fix. But then they made me color it, and so then I like turned it in last minute, or barely turned it in, or maybe I felt confident that day, and I was also like, if I don't turn it in, I never will, because I can't finish it from coloring it, because it's never perfect and it's never good enough if I color it. And you're like, before I didn't care, because they just wanted you to color in the lines with a crayon, but that's impossible because it's a crayon, and Max wants to get close, fill in as much color as possible, which means the crown's gonna go over the line. But then we learned about markers. But that's, most markers like fade, so then you have to go over it 5 times, so we don't like markers. But Sharpies most of the time don't do that, so we're Sharpies, and color pencils are my kryptonite, because once we start to color, we can't stop. And then that's why I was addicted to that coloring game. But then we learned about the color blindness like 100th level or whatever, because we're addicted to it. We're addicted to coloring, and we were forced to stop because we couldn't tell the difference between the colors, because there were just too many options. There were too many different shades. And Max said they all look the same now. And Max can't understand what's happening. Okay, this is way too long. But yeah, so that's everything. Hopefully you skipped most of this video, or you like stopped and started it and realized that I was talking about different things. Okay, that's everything. Bye. Otherwise, I won't post it, and I'll just delete it. Bye.